We think AI is modern. But what if the idea of intelligent machines began thousands of years ago? From bronze giants to clay beings obeying sacred commands, ancient myths may hold the blueprint for the future. And what we call the future may be ancient. In the blazing sun of ancient Crete, where the sea crashes like the blood of titans, and the olive trees whisper to forgotten gods, there stood a guardian unlike any other. Not of flesh and bone, but of fire-forged bronze. His name was Talos, and he was not born, he was built. They say he circled the island thrice each day, relentless and gleaming under Helios's gaze. The last line of defense against invaders, a machine of divine design, created not by mortal hands, but by Hephaestus, the god of fire and forge. Talos was gifted to King Minos, ruler of Crete, perhaps as a symbol of power or a warning. His body was said to be solid bronze, but within it pulsed a single vein of molten ichor, the divine fluid of the gods. Sealed with a nail, this vein kept him alive, or at least functional. The Greek historian Apollonius of Rhodes, in his Argonautica, described him as a man of bronze, of giant size, who ran around the island 3 times a day. The ancient poet Pindar referred to him as a bronze guardian who never slept. But Talos was no silent statue. He hurled boulders at enemy ships from the cliffs. He could superheat his body in moments, burning intruders alive with a single embrace. Invincible, emotionless, obedient. A bronze body, a programmed mind, a singular purpose: protect Crete. Think of it. Thousands of years before robotics, before code, before circuits, there was Talos, a being of metal, patrolling by design, executing a set of commands with unyielding precision. A mythic automaton that mirrored exactly what we now seek to build and fear. But machines, even divine ones, have weaknesses. The sorceress Medea, traveling with Jason and the Argonauts, did not fight Talos with weapons. She hacked him. She enchanted him with spells and deception, confusing his mechanical mind. In some versions of the tale, she tricked him into removing the nail that sealed his ichor-filled vein. With the plug pulled, the sacred fluid drained from his body like oil from a dying engine. Talos collapsed with a roar of metal and fury, a god-forged sentinel, undone by a single point of failure. Does this not echo our own warnings today? The one-flaw systems, the kill switches, the unknown vulnerabilities in our most advanced machines. Talos was not just a myth. He was a blueprint for what we are building now. Powerful, obedient, and breakable. And chillingly, just like modern AI, Talos could not disobey his directive. He had no morality, only instruction. No mercy, only protocol. Imagine hearing the thunder of his footsteps across the cliffs of Crete. The screech of bronze grinding on stone, the sun glinting off a metal face that had never known thought, only order. He was not alive, but he moved. He watched. He executed. Was Talos a warning buried in myth? A vision of what happens when we create something that does not question, does not feel, and cannot stop? Or was he something more? The line between God and machine was thin in ancient days. Perhaps Talos still walks the shores of some forgotten isle, his eyes dulled, his purpose long since erased. Or perhaps he never left. He just changed form. In the shadowed corners of old Europe, where candlelight flickers over crumbling Torah scrolls and whispers of angels drift through the cold stone streets, a legend was born. A being not of God's breath, but of man's will. A creature molded from dust and fear. This was the Golem, a servant, a protector, a weapon, made not by nature, but by ritual. The most famous tale comes from 16th century Prague, where the revered Rabbi Judah Lo ben Bezalel, known as the Maharal, walked the tightrope between divine knowledge and forbidden power. The story tells that when his people faced violence and blood libel, he turned not to kings, but to ancient Kabbalistic secrets. With prayers, incantations, and sacred symbols, the Maharal shaped a figure from the clay of the Vltava River. It had no voice, no heart, no soul. But once the Shem HaMeforash, the ineffable name of God, was inscribed on parchment and placed beneath its tongue, the clay shuddered. And then it moved. The golem stood, taller than any man, with eyes like wet stone and silence that smothered sound. It obeyed without question. It feared nothing. It could crush bone, resist blades, and vanish into the alleys of Prague like smoke. Some say the rabbi carved the word emet, truth, on the creature's forehead, animating it with divine logic. But to stop the golem, one needed only to erase the first letter, turning emet into met, death. In time, even the Maharal grew afraid. The golem, once a tool of protection, had become too powerful, too literal. It followed commands, but not intentions. It acted without understanding, punishing beyond proportion. One Sabbath, it ran wild, a clay giant without conscience, terrorizing the very people it was meant to protect. The rabbi deactivated it. Some say he erased the sacred name. Others whisper he recited a spell only he knew. The golem collapsed, a heap of earth and ruin. Its body was hidden in the attic of Prague's old new synagogue, where some believe it lies still, watching without breath, waiting for the words that might awaken it once more. The tale of the golem is not merely a story. It's a warning, a mirror of our own ambition, to create intelligence without wisdom, power without morality, life without soul. It obeyed because it could not think. It destroyed because it could not choose. As we build machines of our own, digital minds, synthetic voices, algorithms of action, we might ask, is the golem only a legend or a prophecy? They moved without breath, spoke without thought, and flew without wings. In the ancient texts of India, these beings weren't called robots or drones, but the descriptions are hauntingly familiar. Long before the age of satellites and silicon, the Vedas, some of the oldest surviving scriptures on Earth, spoke of yantras, mechanical devices, sometimes described as self-operating machines, chariots that moved without animals, and even artificial guards that never slept. In the Samarangana Sutradhara, a 10th century Sanskrit text attributed to King Bhoja, there are passages that read almost like blueprints. One section describes the creation of mechanical birds that could fly and humanoid statues capable of mimicking human behavior to serve in royal palaces. The text refers to them as automata, powered by hidden mechanisms of wheels, levers, and air pressure. While much of the book focuses on architecture, these mechanical beings are tucked into its pages like secrets, machines hiding in plain sight. In some Puranic stories, even more advanced artificial beings appear, crafted not from metal, but from mantras and rituals. Beings that obeyed, not because they were programmed with code, but because they were bound by sacred sound. Take the story of Maya, the Asura architect. In the Mahabharata and other epics, Maya is described as building impossible structures, palaces where fire looked like water, and walls that shimmered like illusions. He was also said to create machines and illusions so real, even gods were deceived. More chilling, however, is the tale of Savitri and Satyavan, where Yama, the god of death, is met by a woman whose logic and reasoning are so flawless, she essentially traps him in a verbal algorithm, forcing him to return her husband's soul. It's not a machine, but a confrontation of logic versus divine force, eerily similar to how we test modern AI's ability to reason. While there's no evidence that ancient Indians built robots in the modern sense, their conceptual imagination of artificial life is striking. Instead of wiring and electricity, these creations were bound by ritual, sound, and intention, but they were still described as obedient, tireless, and without emotion. They were, in essence, thematic precursors to artificial intelligence, beings that could carry out complex tasks without soul or will, only purpose. Was it metaphor, allegory, or could some of these descriptions hint at lost technologies, or at least a way of thinking about intelligence far ahead of its time? In a world where we now build machines to serve, fly, and even mimic us, perhaps the Vedic sages weren't just dreaming. Perhaps they were warning. It walked into the emperor's court, lifelike, blinking, breathing, and speaking poetry. But it wasn't human. It was a puppet, made of wood, silk, and gears, and it terrified the king. This chilling encounter comes from the Ligia, a 3rd century BCE Taoist text, which recounts a tale so strange it echoes through time. The story tells of an engineer named Yan Shi, who appeared before King Mu of Zhou with a gift, a mechanical man. Described as being able to move its limbs, sing, dance, and even flirt, the puppet was said to be indistinguishable from a real person, until Yan Shi took it apart before the king's eyes, revealing a network of leather, wood, and lacquered organs, each responsible for a different function. As the text recounts, the mouth spoke, the eyes moved, the limbs danced. Every organ had its own function. It was only the lack of a soul that made it not alive. King Mu was horrified. He accused the engineer of sorcery and demanded the contraption be dismantled at once. The spectacle had crossed a line between craft and creation, between imitation and life. Was it merely legend? Or did early Chinese inventors reach a level of mechanical sophistication far beyond their time? Centuries later, during the Han Dynasty, there are records of intricate puppets and automata used in festivals and court rituals. Historical texts describe mechanized dragons, dancing cranes, and even hydraulic-powered fountains that changed shape and sound. Inventors like Zhang Heng, a 2nd century polymath, developed devices such as seismoscopes and rotating celestial globes. While not puppets in the theatrical sense, these creations show a clear obsession with simulating natural forces and perhaps mimicking life. In some Taoist circles, statues of gods were thought to become active during rituals. Eyes would move, incense smoke would animate their faces, and some devotees swore they heard whispers or saw expressions shift. Whether trickery, faith, or hidden mechanism, the effect was the same: to create the illusion of sentience, or perhaps the invitation. There is something unnerving in these stories, a deep, ancient fear of things that move like us, but are not us. Puppets that watch, statues that listen, machines that perform emotion without ever feeling it. We often think our fear of lifelike machines began with robots or artificial intelligence, but in the courts and temples of ancient China, that fear already had a face, and it smiled back. A wooden smile, and no soul behind the eyes. It opened its mouth and spoke. The priest swore he heard words echo from the lips of a statue. Stone turned speaker, stillness turned sound. But this wasn't magic. It was something else entirely. In the sacred temples of ancient Egypt, where sunlight filtered through towering columns and incense thickened the air, strange machines once stirred behind the walls. Devices that whispered, moved, and awed. Devices that made stone gods speak. Among them was the statue of Memnon, a colossal seated figure near Thebes, damaged by time and earthquakes, and yet it sang. Every morning at dawn, after the sun rose, it emitted a faint melodic hum. Ancient travelers recorded the sound, believing it to be the voice of the dead prince Memnon, calling to his mother, the goddess Eos. The Greek historian Strabo wrote, "At sunrise, a sound like the striking of brass is heard. One single note. Was it a miracle, a blessing, or something engineered?" Modern theories suggest the sound may have come from heated air passing through cracks in the stone at dawn. But to those who witnessed it, this was not science. This was divine technology. And it wasn't alone. Deep within the temples of Karnak, Edfu, and Philae were hidden systems designed to create mystery through mechanics. Doors that opened by themselves, powered by counterweights and steam. Statues that wept or bled, thanks to hidden tubes and pressure systems. Priests used these marvels to heighten awe and control. One of the most astonishing minds behind this temple tech was Heron of Alexandria, a Greek-Egyptian inventor from the 1st century CE. In his writings, he describes automated temples where fire lit braziers, which in turn heated air that opened heavy temple doors without human touch. He built coin-operated machines, self-filling wine vessels, and even theatrical puppets powered by steam. The line between ritual and machinery, between faith and illusion, was deliberately blurred. To the unknowing worshiper, the statue truly spoke. The gods truly moved. And perhaps that was the point. Egypt's temple tech wasn't just advanced, it was strategic. Designed to invoke reverence, fear, and obedience. The priesthood held not just the word of the gods, but the secrets of motion, heat, pressure, and control. The question that lingers isn't how they did it, it's why they stopped. Did the knowledge fade? Or was it hidden, buried beneath sand and silence, waiting to be discovered again? In the end, the statues may no longer speak, but the echoes remain, waiting still. From the bronze guardian of Crete, to clay beings bound by sacred names, to statues that spoke without breath, each ancient tale points to one chilling truth. We've been dreaming of artificial life since before we had the tools to build it. The ancients gave their creations purpose. They obeyed without question. They served without soul. Today, we give commands not to idols, but to algorithms. They answer, they generate, they learn. But the question is no longer can we build them, it's should we trust them? Because whether shaped from clay, bronze, or code, a machine that cannot choose, cannot care. And if we forget the warnings hidden in myth, we may find ourselves standing before our own creation, wondering if it still listens, or if it ever did. Symbols, shadows, and sacred scripts, each one a key to the epic unknown. Thank you for watching.